Welcome to Business Influencers. Hope everyone is having a great week. If you're new to Business Influencers, you found us here either on our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple, and of course, the TALRadio.org website. We greatly appreciate those that are getting so much value out of the show, and it's because of you and your feedback that we continue to bring in guests and experts that share from experience and their words of wisdom to help move you and your business forward. Again, our show is being brought to you today by Alumni Direct, a new social media community platform dedicated to bringing alumni together, an opportunity to generate genuine, authentic relationships, perhaps with people you haven't talked to in a while, perhaps they're new people, and a great opportunity possibly to land your next job opportunity or a future business partner. Alumni Direct also offers affinity programs that allow you to tap into a wide array of services that perhaps that you would not be able to get on your own. Check them out at alumnidirect.com. Well, we have a great show today, and I am so looking forward. And we're going to be talking about my last best advice. And we're going to be talking with Paul Hood. And let me give you a little background about Paul. Paul is an author, speaker, and consultant on tax, estate, and charitable planning. He is also a vice president with Thompson and Associates, a charitable estate planning firm. He is a native of Louisiana, a double LSU Tiger, obtained his undergraduate and law degrees from Louisiana State University and with an LLM in taxation from Georgetown University Law Center before settling down to practice tax and estate planning law in the New Orleans area. You know, Paul has got a great backstory, and I'm going to leave that while he's going to talk about that. But again, you'll be able to find out how you can really connect and reach out to Paul here later today in any of the areas that he helps so many people and businesses out. And without further ado, we welcome Paul Hood to the show. Paul, how you doing today?
I'm fine, man. How are you?
Doing
great to be with you and your listeners today.
Thank you so much. Well, we are so honored to have you here with Business Influencers. And I love this thing. You and I chatted briefly, and when we look at our, my last best advice, and you have a story around this about, and I guess this was when you were 36. Let's start there because, with anything remarkable with sharing and helping others to move forward, there's always a backstory.
Well, there is. And this one was dramatic because it changed my professional life. When I was 36 years old, I was a solo practitioner. I left a law firm, a 75 lawyer firm in which I was a partner, and went out on my own. And of course, when you do that, you're essentially an eternal op. But I knew that I was going to be successful because I knew I was a good estate planner, and I already had enough clients to keep me busy. And of course, I did great. But one day I get a phone call from a financial advisor and said, Paul, I got this lady, she's 93 years old, got a lot of money. Most of it's going to go to charity because she doesn't have kids. She never married. And I'm worried about her vulnerability to her nieces and great nephews, all of whom have designs on her wealth. And she's never done any estate planning at all. And she's 93 years old. Would you help her? And I said, well, sure, I'm happy to help her. And he said, but the only rub is she don't come to New Orleans. She's old. She's 93, and she's actually not in good health. And she lives out of town, about 50, 60 miles from New Orleans. Would you drive to her house and visit with her? So I said, well, yeah. I said, I normally make house calls now as it is because most clients are more comfortable talking about, what's important to them, their estate planning, in their own homes rather than in your offices, and they're nervous about being in your office. So I drive out there, and this is no regular home, Chris. This is an antebellum home. It was an old plantation home. It was one of the few that the North didn't burn down, okay, which meant that it was used as a headquarters because that's usually what the Union troops did, is they requisitioned the property if they could use it. And if they didn't think they could, they just burn it down.
Yeah.
So this one was saved. I think the original structure was built in 1786. It had 17 bedrooms, and this lady lived by herself. So I show up, one of her people that worked at the house, I counted at least 5 that worked there while I was there that trip. So, he confirms that I have an appointment with her, and he receives me and sticks me in the parlor, and I'm waiting on her. And it was about a 10-minute wait, and the double doors, this huge, these 20-foot high ceiling home, and the double doors open up, and I see two people, one of whom is wheeling her in a wheelchair. And I immediately think, okay, this is not going to be tough, pretty good with elderly ladies. Well, I didn't know Hattie Lee Higginbotham. And first thing she tells me is, she is Hattie Lee, and this is not her real name, but I will tell you that it was her middle name because she was a very proud descendant of Robert E. Lee.
Wow.
And she says, my name is Hattie Lee Higginbotham, and I'm from the Virginia Lees. Not Virginia, Virginia Lees.
Virginia.
The way they say it there. And what she tells me is, she says, Sonny boy, she goes, I'm not here to listen to you tell me how smart you are. Now, I hadn't said a word yet, Chris. Okay.
Yeah.
He says, I don't have much time left, Sonny boy. And that's what she called me, Sonny boy. And she said, I need your last best advice. And she said, what I mean by that, Sonny boy, is I need your advice that's so compelling, so important that you would impart it to me on your deathbed. She goes, what's your last best advice, Sonny boy? And I want to tell you, I thought I knew everything about estate planning. I was one of the leading estate planners in Louisiana at 36. Okay. So I was pretty good. Well, I had Emperor Has No Clothes On.
Wow.
So I start stammering through an answer, and I'm trying to figure out what's important. And of course, the idea of tax savings crossing my mind. I'm like, no, that's nothing. Because I also remembered that her advisor said that most of her estate was going to charity, which meant there probably would be little to no estate tax to begin with. So what I did was I eventually stammered on to this answer. And this is what I told her in the end. I said, Miss Higginbotham, I said, your estate planning decisions are going to impact the relationships of your survivors. I said, and it can be a positive impact or a negative impact. And that apparently was a smart enough answer to keep me in the house. Okay. Because I got a sneaking suspicion that had I given her an answer that she didn't think was worth listening to, that I would have been escorted to the door and sent back to New Orleans. And in the end, I ended up working with her. She was almost 99. I think she was 5 days from her 99th birthday. Died. I mean, her estate was north of $10 million, but there was very little estate tax because about 85% of it went to charity. I figured out that what I could do best for her was to run interference from her expectational nieces and nephews and other hangers-on that thought themselves entitled to part of her largesse. What I took away from that, Chris, was I'm like, I wasn't ready for that question. And shame on me for not being ready for it. And I said, what are the things in estate planning that I believe are compelling, that are timeless, and that are simply non-negotiable? What are the most important things? And I'm a one-page guy. I love things that I can illustrate, demonstrate on one page, because I believe that when you can boil something down to one page, you understand what you're writing about. And it's very similar to what Abe Lincoln said. I can speak for 3 days on any topic with 5 minutes notice. He said, but if you ask me to speak for 5 minutes on a topic, it's going to take me 3 days to prepare. And it's just an inverse relationship. So, and like I said, on my LinkedIn, the actual one pager that I started developing in 1996 is there. And on my website, paulhoodservices.com, there's a link on my articles page to an article named 32 Core Principles. And I basically expound on my beliefs and philosophies about estate planning. But I believe that that's the way that you become a really good planner, and what I describe myself as a purposeful estate planner.
Yeah.
I believe that that's how you do it, by standing for something. Tax savings has very little to do with it, if anything.
Well, I love that. Like it's something bigger than just what is being discussed. Like, so, and that's what it really stuck out for me when you shared that story. And when you're out there talking to people, about this is more than just doing business. This is a legacy. This is future. I mean, this is estate planning, right?
Exactly.
They're going to be long gone at that point, but they're going to have either a spouse, children, grandkids, whatever. This is, something that, again, it's got to be what's really important to them. And there's got to be something, like you said, those values behind it.
Well, that's exactly right. And you see, too often that is missed. I have a model in my latest book, Yours, Mine, and Ours, Estate Planning for People in Blended or Step Families, which just came out about 2 weeks ago. But in the book, I think I'm going to pay a Roman numeral 13 up in the introduction, this model of what I call the bricks and mortar of estate planning. And most estate planners stick to the bricks. And by bricks, I mean the quantitative tools and techniques of estate planning: wills, trusts, powers of attorney, pay on death accounts, joint tenancy, all the techniques that we use of property transmission. But I spend most of my time on the mortar side, because I got to tell you, take estate planning out of it and you just got a bunch of bricks and you stack them, but you don't mortar those bricks together. Those bricks are going to tumble on the least tension. They're going to all fall down, because the mortar is what holds the bricks together.
Yeah.
And, by mortar in estate planning, I mean the things like intergenerational communication, which is, if I had to give anybody, advice about, what do I do in my estate plan? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to have an honest discussion and a give and take with the people who are going to get your estate. And not only the people who are going to get your estate, but the people who think they're going to get your estate, but who are not. One of the biggest tragedies, Chris, in estate planning is people don't do what I just told you that they should do. And what ends up happening is, I've had grown men, who were very successful, worth tens of millions of dollars, and they're leaders in their community, literally break down and I was usually in their offices, and start crying in front of me. And these are proud men that, this don't happen to them in public. They're the kings of carnival in New Orleans, and they're leading people. And it was usually over what their parents did in their estate plans. And their parents were worth, in one case, my client was worth north of 50 million. His parents' estate total with 4 kids was $200,000. And they left him $25,000, and they left his 3 siblings the balance of the estate. And he and his parents didn't tell him why. And $25,000 meant nothing to him. In fact, if he'd have gotten his full 50, it wouldn't have meant anything to him either. But it meant everything to him, because it's not about the principal, it's about the principle. And I call it the love scoreboard. What you get in a will often is interpreted as a barometer of how much you were loved.
Yeah.
These guys were both convinced that their parents didn't love them as much. And I told them straight up, I said, I have trouble believing, based on the childhood you've told me about, that your parents loved you any less than they loved your siblings. I said, the tragedy is that they didn't have one communication with you, whether they wrote you a letter that you only got after they died, or they told you up front. They didn't think you needed the money and that your siblings needed it more. And let's say one of his siblings, had a child with autism, some other, real serious disease. They said, well, they need it more. And had that conversation happened, these people wouldn't have been carrying around, because one of them had cut off relations with his siblings. Because like I told you, what I told Hattie Lee, his parents' estate planning decisions affected the relationships, and in his case, ended the relationship with his siblings and basically cut off his access to his nieces and nephews. You see families, where the word aunt and uncle is now used as a pejorative. That's so, my aunt and uncle, it's no longer family, it's outlawed. So from that standpoint, it can be a real serious thing.
You just really gave some valuable points about this. And I can see people that are, in your business, they'll probably be hearing this going, my God, why? That's why he really stands out in terms of how he connects with people. What would be some other things that you could share from that experience, Paul, what you had and how it's like really, changed? Well, I mean, in this case, this happened, how it's changed the course of how you go about connecting and doing business with people.
Intergenerational communication piece is just huge, because you see what happens, Chris, when someone doesn't get what they expected or in the manner in which they expected to get it.
Yeah.
Their brain goes to a place that I call the parade of horribles. And they envision a worst case scenario, and there's usually a bad hat in the place. Somebody is to blame. Ends up happening is either family relationships are blown apart, or in some cases, people are so upset that they actually sue and they end up in court. And that's rarely a good thing. People say, well, just a greedy rich family, fighting over money that they didn't earn. So you have that. So the intergenerational communication is critical. Trust, another part of the mortar. Having fiduciaries in your estate plan, trustees, executors, that have some trust, but you build in, and this is another piece of the mortar, checks and balances in the estate plan. Because, Lord Acton was right. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And you build in checks and balances in the estate plan, whether you give people veto powers over certain things, or you give them the right to remove the trustee and replace them with another institutional trustee, for example. There are lots of ways in a family business. Let's say it's a blended family, and they've decided that the stepmother is going to be, the boss or the nominal president of the family business, but her stepkids are working there. You want to make sure the kids have employment agreements so that they're not at-will employees, so that the step-parent can't fire them, because we've all seen that happen. And usually it hurts the business, and indirectly, ultimately directly, the step-parent. They're too blind to see that when they pull the trigger on firing their stepson, who's actually a pretty good administrator of the business. Checks and balances are critical. Making sure that you're in control of your estate planning. Too many people try to abdicate control to their lawyer. How they invite the lawyer to do it. And you say, well, how do they invite the lawyer to take over their process? Well, it's usually something like a question like, and I'll ask them, well, what do you want to do? And what would you like to accomplish? And then when they say, what do everybody else in my situation do? And that gives too many lawyers the license to sort of shove them into a category based largely on the size of their estate and not fashion the plan to fit the family's unique circumstances. So what ends up happening is a lot of times those lawyers will draft plans that do what the lawyer thinks they need done. The client either doesn't read them or reads them and says, that's not what I want. And they procrastinate. And some lawyers have a real problem. They have no problem getting clients to meet with them and to draft their documents, but they have real problems getting clients to sign them. I did some clinical research with psychiatrists about 25 years ago, and in estate planning, which is a little different because of the legal ethics rules around confidentiality. This isn't done often, but we got all the right permissions and everything else. And I identified, and in the Blended Family book, I go into the 12 distinct fears that people can have in estate plan.
Wow.
And most estate planners think, oh, he's just fearful of thinking about his own death.
Yeah.
Fear of mortality. But that's just one of the 12 fears. They actually fear us too.
You've given some really valuable wisdom, and I'm looking forward to continuing this conversation. We're going to have you back on this show again, and that you have just shared some valuable insights. We're near the end of the show, but I wanted to be able to give you time. I want to be able to have the audience that how can they reach out and get to know you, but more importantly, you're getting to know them and how perhaps you might be able to help them.
Well, put it this way. My website is pretty simple. It's paulhoodservices.com. And my email is paulhoodservices.com. And I get emails from people all over the world. I'm really good about answering them pretty quickly, usually same day. And, if I can help people, Chris, I do. And because I don't do this for any reason but to help them.
Help people. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Well, that's what I love about how we connected, Paul. It's based on shared values. It's about serving others. When you give without expectation, you receive without resistance. It comes back. And you're definitely
been that way my whole life, Chris.
I love it.
I've lived in abundance because I give from my heart freely.
Well, we want to thank you, Paul, for being here and taking time out of your schedule to be with us. And we want to thank you, listeners, each and every week joining us here, The Sustainable Success Way. Again, this show wouldn't be where it's at if it wasn't for you. And we're here committed to bring in experts and guests, sharing from experience like Paul did today to help move you personally in terms of your success, as well as your business forward. So until then, we'll hope everyone has a great weekend. And we hope that, again, we see you next week, another show time, and have a great one, everyone. Talk soon.